Hello, my fellow classmates. My name is Ana Regalado. Thank you for joining me as I do a quick analysis of the three most prominent learning theories in educational psychology, which are behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism. And as I look at how they've influenced the best practices used by teachers in classrooms all over the world. As I said in my reflective essay, from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I knew that learning was my passion and that helping others learn was my calling. And so, as an adult, I embarked in this journey of seeking the best practices for effective teaching. And it's taken me a lot of years, right, to come up with better solutions for some of the challenges that I encountered in the classroom. And now that I've studied the theories behind some of the best practices that I've learned over the years, now I want to kind of reflect back on what I've learned, right? Really, these last few weeks of our readings, our discussions, I really feel like now I have a better grasp of what these theories are and how they've influenced the best practices that I've seen over the years, and that I now am aware of how where they came from, what is the reasoning behind them, right? So that's really what I'm gonna talk about today. What are the theories behind the best practices that I've used in the past, or that I want to use in the future? For example, if we look at the learning theories, I've used some of these methodologies in my classroom, some of these techniques. For example, I've used memorization and association to kind of help my students perform a certain desired behavior within my classroom, right? That is going to help them um, digest the information that I need them to digest. I have also used graphic organizers to help them process this new information, especially when they're dealing with complex information, like in chemistry or physics, right? And I have also created opportunities within my classroom for my students to explore and to make connections to previous knowledge and to really kind of come up with conclusions and really explore uh, new situations, new challenges, right? So all of that, if you notice, touches on each of these theories, which is the behaviorism, the cognitivism, and the constructivism. So just within my classroom, I've used all three of these practices to achieve a goal. For example, I've conditioned my students to know when to transition from one activity to the next, using music, using sounds. And so that's basically I'm showing them what the desired behavior is using a stimuli, which in this case is music. So I've done that in my classroom, and it has worked very effectively for me. Um, in terms of cognitivism, where my students are more active in the participation and processing information. I've used graphic organizers, especially in physics, right, where a lot of times the word problems are very hard to digest, very hard to process. And I've used a graphic organizer to help my students kind of like process all the information that's included in the problem and be able to kind of chunk and be able to make the connections they need to make, right? In terms of constructivism in science and physics and chemistry, I think it lends itself to be able to provide students with opportunities of exploring things. And so that kind of came easy because of the subject. So I I have that already innate in the subject, but I did come across a complex situation when we were doing distance learning within the pandemic, because it was hard to give them those same experiences that they would have had in the classroom, exploring with chemicals, exploring with tools, things of that nature, uh, from home, right? So thankfully, I was able to find a a product that our district purchased for us, where I could actually give them something similar, where I would present the scenario, I would present the video, and kind of like ask them to make observations, ask them to um, come up with conclusions, come up with theories, hypotheses, things like that. So they were still able to kind of construct that knowledge by exploring different things, different challenges, different scenarios, even though they were still working from home. So I have um, used kind of those practices that are talked about within constructivism in my classroom. I'm very, very thankful for the experience that I've had thanks to this course. Between the readings and the discussions, it really prompted me to self reflect upon the practices that I've used within my classroom over the years and really what has worked, what hasn't worked, why it worked or why it didn't work, and really make connections to uh, the conclusions that have been made from these theories. And so I leave you with this question: what are the best practices that you have used in your own classroom, and how do they align to these theories?